Hello. Hopefully we can hear me. Today we're going to be going live with Helia. I am so excited. This is going to be such an epic live. Hi Helia. She's going to join. Hopefully.
Hey!
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, okay, perfect. Nice. Okay, I'm going to put this I'm in a coffee shop, so we're doing this a little differently. But I'm excited. I'm so excited. I've been like on the edge of my seat, like ready to hop on here. So
yeah, I'm excited too.
So for everyone joining, we're just going to be discussing today kind of working with plant medicine, like what that kind of entails, maybe some of like the taboo things that are associated with working with plant medicine. Oh my goodness. And yeah, we have Helia here because she is a plant medicine guide. She works with, I'll let you introduce yourself, but just for a little prerequisite, she works with cacao specifically, but has worked with other medicines as well. And yeah, so I would love to hear about your experience working with plant medicine and just like your story and introduce yourself, all the things.
Oh my God, thanks for having me, Mads. You got my Mads on here, right?
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing to call you.
Call me whatever you want.
Okay, I'm forever calling you Mads. So, firstly, I just want to say, Mads and I love talking about taboo things.
We do.
We have a relationship around that, about talking about the things that nobody wants to talk about. So I'm excited to be here and also a little bit like, oh, this is a very interesting topic to start with. But yeah, I'm Helia and I work with cacao. And my journey with cacao has really deep roots. After launching Cacao del Sol, I found out that my great grandfather grew cacao and exported it from Puerto Rico. My grandmother's from Puerto Rico, and so there's a really cool connection there. And I don't even know where to start because there's so much.
I know.
There's so much.
I feel the same way, honestly. So just wherever you want to start, and we don't really have a time constraint here, so we can just flow.
So, I live in Mexico, and being in Mexico, the word medicine is not as taboo as in the United States. Because right now, like with where I'm at with Cacao del Sol, we're looking into like creating the correct structure for it. Like, is it going to be a church? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be this? And like, there's so many rules. You can't say anything as a medicine if it's going to be a church. And like, just the way that we perceive medicine in different cultures is so interesting, and like the taboo around calling plants medicine, whether it's rosemary or whether it's ayahuasca, like it's all medicine, like I was just at my mom's house visiting family, and I had the worst headache, and mom's like, you don't take medicine. And I was like, no, but I'm gonna go work with my own stuff. And I just worked with some lavender essential oil, and it just shifted my whole energy and completely helped alleviate what I was going through. And I'm like, this is like the real working with the plants and working with nature and the elements to bring more holistic feelings and approaches to the body. And I was reflecting before we hopped on this call, and when you take like Advil or something, like, why do you take that? It's because you have a headache, or because like you have whatever, you are tired, XYZ. But if you go and work with plant medicine, why are you taking that? It's like a deeper reason. It's like not the symptom that you're working with. You're working with like the root of that symptom. And so the intention is already inherently deeper when we're working with the earth and we're working with the plants. And so that was a really interesting thing that came into my awareness as I was like preparing to come live with you. It was like, oh, well, the intention is everything, right?
Mhm.
I want to hear
Yeah.
your.
I love that. I love that we're going right into it. Yeah, so I think for me, I grew up around a lot of addiction. Oh, hello. I grew up around a lot of addiction. I grew up around a lot of like misuse of medicine, right? So once I start, and even like plant medicines. And so once I started like formulating my own relationship with medicine, with like regular like pharmaceuticals and additionally like plant medicine, I also like noticed that. Like I didn't really notice it until you said it right now, but the intention is inherently so much deeper, and it does connect you to yourself. I feel like on a deeper level, and I think that's like maybe I'm speaking very broadly here, but I feel like that's what a lot of us are missing. And when we go and we try and mask our symptoms with these like pharmaceutical medicines, it's like we're kind of suppressing down that connection versus like when we work with plant medicine, it kind of brings it all to the surface, and it can be kind of triggering because it does bring it all to the surface. It shows you right in your face, and there are things that you can't really ignore when you're working with plant medicine. So in my experience, I feel like I wanted to utilize plant medicine in a way that would like mask the symptoms, like push everything down when I initially was like exposed. But as I've grown and worked with the medicine and cultivated my own like self-awareness and stuff like that, worked with like trauma and all the things, I've begun to realize like there's so much beauty in actually being able to feel the things that we're trying to suppress. And I think plant medicine does a really beautiful job of bringing those things to the surface. And that isn't that is one of the reasons why it's so taboo, because it's like in your mind, like you think about that and you're like, oh, well, like that's going to make it worse, or like that's going to make me more hyper aware of it, and that's going to create issues down the road. But what's the consequence, right? Like, do you really want to be alive and feel your emotions and live the whole like spectrum of life, or do you want to continuously mask these symptoms and kind of like shun your innate expression? So yeah, I have an interesting experience with plant medicine because I see both sides of the spectrum, like how it can be like addictive, how it can be like harmful, and then also how we can work with it to utilize it to actually boost us up, to build us up, and to create this new level of relating with the earth, with ourselves. And I think it's really beautiful to have that perspective. But I love um working with other people who see like have had different experiences, right? Because I feel like plant medicine is a very like subjective experience. Like you have your view of it and you have your experience with it. And yeah, so I would love to hear like what got you started. I know you said like after you started working with cacao, you realized your grandma was working with it on Puerto Rico, but I would love to hear like what kind of led you down the path of working with plant medicine cacao, and how that's like really impacted your life and your perception.
Well, I first want to reflect on some of the things you said, because addiction is such a big thing. Like, that's why I just went home with my family, because my dad just recently passed away and he had been an addict for many years, and it was drug related. And there's a lot in my family, and I think everyone that I've lost in the last 10 years has been to drugs. And so for me, like, riding this line between like making sure I'm not doing things for pleasure and doing things for purpose. Like, there's a very fine line between pleasure and purpose, right? And I think pleasure is part of our human experience, but staying in check and making sure that you check, you're like connected to your heart and connected to your mind and connected to your whole body before just doing something because it's a fad or it's what other people are doing or X, Y, and Z. And I feel like something really important with the plants is they speak to you.
100%.
They speak to you. It's not this thing that's like, I'm going to go seek out this thing for this thing, because that intention of seeking is going to lead you down a whole road of just like continuously
Avoidance.
spiraling in the in the avoidance and in the seeking energy. And so for me specifically, I started working with cacao. It was, I don't even know like when and how, but I've always been a huge chocolate fan. Like I've always been a huge chocolate fan. It's just been who I've been like all of my life. And whenever I discovered the pure form of chocolate, and I was on this health journey of like cutting out sugars, cutting out. So I went to India and Nepal for like 7 months, and I studied yoga and I trekked around the Annapurna, and I became like this very Buddha-like meditating, peaceful being that was like, I will never do any other plants or anything ever again. And at the time, before that, I worked with like mushrooms a bit, but it was all for like play. There was never like this like grounded, I'm here to receive or to clear things from my psyche or from my body, from my lineage. It's never been anything like that. And play is fine too. We need play just as much as we need other things. But I was like, I don't need any of that anymore. Like I feel so connected to everything I was looking for with psychedelics or with whatever it was that I was playing with. And it just like became this thing where I was almost like avoiding and pushing it away. But I started to get sick. I started to get sick from everything I was eating. Like dairy was making me sick, sugar was making me sick, and there wasn't a lot of like health or food consciousness in my family growing up. We ate a lot of processed things, like nothing like that's good for the body, like high vibrational foods. So I got back after eating really clean there, and I was eating normal, and I was like, everything is making me sick. And I couldn't figure out what it was. Like, I had to eliminate everything. I eliminated sugar, I eliminated dairy, I eliminated meat. I was basically eating vegetables. That was all I was eating, was fruits and vegetables. And like, it became this thing where like, there was a deeper issue, and it was my stomach, and like, energetically, it was self-worth and not really being like connected to my purpose and myself. And so long story short, cacao comes into my life, and it's like the pure version of chocolate. There's no sugar, there's none of the stuff. And so I started to work with cacao in that way. And then I started to open my mind to other things because the plants were talking to me, they were coming to me, and I started to work with mushrooms and cacao, which is the only way I will work with mushrooms because it's so grounding and it's so connecting to like the heart space, and it's really, really beautiful.
Not to interrupt you, but I know Ron is in here, and Ron and I have done multiple ceremonies with specifically cacao and mushrooms, and we were just talking the other week about how it really is an entirely different experience when you allow both of the medicines to work through you. Like they communicate through you, and it creates this entirely different experience. So beautiful. Yeah.
I agree. Well, oh, hey, Ron. The thing with cacao is that it brings you into the body. It opens up the blood vessels. It connects the head and the heart. It activates the whole body. It works with everything. And so I feel like when you work with cacao and anything else you're working with it, it just brings the experience into the body. Like a lot of times if you're just like eating mushrooms or whatever, it's a very like up here experience, and like how do I bring that into the body, or you're fighting your body and it's really uncomfortable. So it feels like for me, my experience is that cacao opens the body into receiving the medicine. It opens the pathways within, and that's just like one example with cacao. So yeah, I started to work with like the pure version of cacao, and then I moved to Mexico, and I was like, yes, there's cacao here. And I went on this journey where I was in San Miguel de Allende with my previous partner, and I really, really wanted to like find cacao. And I was like, wait, there's no cacao here? There's like cacao ceremonies, but it was really hard to find sourcing.
Yeah.
But I remember one day I'm kind of like everywhere right now, but I was so agitated. I was kind of like in this place where I was having a really hard day. And it felt like cacao was like calling me from the kitchen. We had some in there. And I just went and I prepared a cup and literally one sip and it was just like, I was like, whoa, that was freaking crazy. I have never experienced something so immediately shift my energy to just like literally one sip. And it was just like all of my like frustration and like the uncomfortability in my being and in my body just immediately disappeared. And I felt so euphoric after that. And I was like, whoa, there's something deeper here for me. And so I end up moving and I just continue my journey with cacao. And I was working with cacao like every day in Tepoztlan along with sweat lodges. I did sweat lodges like sometimes twice a week. And I was working with a lot of other medicines, not just plant medicines, but ancestral medicines and ways of being. The parrots are outside. I love it here. And cacao started coming to me in dreams and started showing me that I was going to be like sharing the medicine with people. And I had so much resistance to it. I'm like, yo, I'm in Mexico as like primarily a white woman.
Yeah.
Like I'm not about to be like serving cacao and sharing cacao and like sourcing cacao. Like that feels really crazy. And it kept coming into my dreams over and over, and cacao was teaching me different ways to work with her spirit, and I have like a lot of connection with my dreams. And so finally I gave in because I realized sometimes up to 5 people a week would message me asking me, where do you get your cacao? Because I was always drinking it on Instagram, just like living my life, drinking cacao. And so I was like, okay, I hear you. I hear you, universe. I'm going to do this. And so it just really naturally unfolded from there. Everything just arrived. Like every piece of the puzzle was just like brought to me. And then I talked to my grandma after launching Cacao del Sol, and she was like, oh, I know cacao. I was like, what?
Yeah, I remember
like, yeah,
you telling me that story. Yeah, that's really beautiful. And there are so many like beautiful points that we could touch on here. I would love to dive into a little bit of the resistance aspect, specifically with like ethnicity. Sorry if you can hear that. Specifically with ethnicity, because I feel like that's like one of the things that comes up for me, especially when working with plant medicine, because I've sat in many circles and I've actively felt judgment from the people running those circles of like, oh, who is she to like speak on this? Like, who is she to, and that's an internal thing too, right? So I would love to go into this resistance and kind of, it just kept bothering you, so you went for it, right? But I would love to hear any tips that, or like anything you would say to someone who's interested in getting into this work and committing themselves to working with the plants in a way that is like respectful and supportive for all the parties involved, and like what that entails.
This is a really big topic. It's a good question. But I will just say, for one, the voice isn't gone.
Yeah.
It doesn't go away.
Yeah.
There's still some things that I'm like sharing and I'm like, is this too much? You know, I'm like, can I do this? And I have to check in with myself and be like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
This is coming from my heart, and it's coming from the channel that runs through me. It's not coming from me wanting to be seen or to show up in a certain way for people. Like, this is coming from my soul. Yeah. And so for me, like, if it's coming from my soul and people don't resonate with my soul, bye.
I literally have full body chills right now. Yes.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah. And I think it's a little different for me because I've been so disconnected from my roots. But my roots, like, I have a lot of roots from all over the world. I just, like, also have a lot of Caucasian roots as well. Yeah. So there's, like, that mixture. But I've never been connected to my ancestral roots until I started to go on this journey with medicine. And I feel like a big thing is, as, like a white person or as a person that's from the United States, there's a lot of shit going on in the United States, especially with pharmaceuticals, especially with like the control. And so there is like this real trauma that people experience that has to do with the color of our skin. Everywhere in the world, doesn't matter who you are, where you're at, there's some kind of trauma related to our outer appearance, right?
Yep.
And so it's really for me about connecting to the energy and to the essence and to the earth, and always talking to the earth. And I think a lot of it is sacrifice, which is weird to talk about, but a lot of it is sacrifice. You got to sacrifice things. You've got to like leave offerings to the earth, and to leave offerings to yourself, and to
I would also even add that you working with the plants is a sacrifice in itself, because you're not to that you're like actually sacrificing anything, but you're giving your body over to be a divine vessel, right? Like you're allowing the energy to be poured through you, and it's not coming from a place of like ego. It's coming from a place of like, wow, there is something that needs to be channeled, right? And it's bigger than you. Not to interrupt you, I want you to continue.
No, I love that, because now we're going to side tangent a little bit. So I was just in Peru in November, and I sat with, I usually have a hard time saying these kinds of things online, but fuck it. I sat with ayahuasca, and I did a tobacco purge and wachuma, and it was with a really beautiful shaman that's from the Peruvian Amazon, and he also has like his mom comes from the mountains. His name is Juan Carlos Demenci. Like, check him out.
I've heard of him.
He's amazing. He's great.
Him, yeah.
He's world renowned. He travels all over the world and shares art therapies and ayahuasca and many different medicines, music, and he's just a really, really great human. So I went to his retreat with his partner and a couple other facilitators, and just even being in a ceremony full of people is healing. To 100%. Be like, I'm about to like see my own resistances and the pains within, and like the family addiction and whatever I'm there to like process and be within myself around a bunch of other people doing their own shit. And like, that was the hardest part for me, is like, am I taking up too much space? Am I being like, okay, like, am I taking too much energy? Am I taking too much space? And like, the voice is like, everyone is doing the same work here. Like, this is a safe space for all of us. And in plant medicine space, what I've noticed is whenever there's a group of people, it turns into a family. Oh, everyone, 100%. Even like, you can have a reflection of your brother across the circle, or like your grandma, or like, there's just these energies that are flowing through everyone. It's kind of like a family constellation, but at the end, it's like, my ears ringing. Like, the love that you experience in there with everyone is almost as healing as the plants themselves. And so I went there. I'm going to share a little bit about my experience. So I was really working to kind of untangle some of the family energy that I have, because I've silently supported my family in addiction for years. Like, every sweat lodge, I was sitting there and I would do prayers for addiction, do prayers for my brother, do prayers for my dad, and just like, everything was for everyone else around me. And I was just like, this retreat is for me. Like, this one is for me. And so actually, the interesting thing was this addiction, this family addiction, was on top of me. And I was fighting it for hours. It was like one of like the most intense experiences I've ever had. And I was like trying to like tie like the knots off and like be like, you're not my fucking problem. Like, I had been holding the space of it. I had been holding these demons for my family. And so I released them, which took a lot of time. It took a lot of effort. It took a lot of help. Me asking for help, calling the shaman over and being like, can you clear my energy, was medicine for me. Being like, I need help. I need help right now. And it was literally the most beautiful experience, because when we heal ourselves, we heal our family. Not in a sense of like, I just went home, which felt like the actual ceremony, right? I just felt like everything I had just uncovered came back to the surface. And it wasn't, I'm here to preach to you guys. I'm here to tell you the work that I've done. I'm here to like tell you what you're doing wrong. It's more of, I have felt the triggers and I've released them in myself. So now I'm just going to be here and I'm going to love you guys. And you know, when someone is acting away or presenting something that feels really shitty, but you just remain present in your love and you don't hide, you don't yell, you don't interact in this way, it bounces off of you and then they feel it. They feel that void. And then they're like, holy shit. It's not that you have to fix anyone or fix something. It's like there's no longer a place for it to stick in you. There's no longer a place for it to like manifest, and then that heals them because now they got their own medicine served back to them through themselves, actually. And it's like this isn't like a representation of what happened, just like some of the things I was experiencing and seeing and viewing. But I found it really interesting because my dad passed 2 weeks after I came back from the Amazon and from drugs. And I was just like, if that wasn't a mind fuck, I don't know what was. And I know he's free. Like the day he passed, I saw a shooting star in the sky, and it was in a lot of cultures, like a shooting star is a representation that a soul has made it to heaven. And so I was like, I just felt so free. Like, oh my God, my dad's free. Like, I'm free of his suffering. He's free of his suffering. Like, and the family can heal. And yeah, I wanted to like dive into that. That was a side tangent,
No,
but yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I think it acts as a testimony to the plants being advocates of the ancestors, right? Like they are part of the collective consciousness, and it is part of us that is moving us forward. And although it can be tricky, although it can feel really heavy, although we may experience the triggers again, it's like we have this, I almost think of it like we have someone like behind us, like backing us, like holding us up, like and it's not even like a being, it's like that memory of that interaction, of that sensation of being so intimate with the plants. And the thing about, I want to touch on this really quick, your blood is like when you ingest plants, when you work with plants, it goes into your bloodstream, right? Your blood is connected to every single one of your ancestors. So when you shift something in your blood, in your system, and then you expose yourself to the individuals who are in your family who also share that same blood, you literally like practice alchemy. Like it is a practice of alchemy. And that's how I really see working with plants, is it is a practice of alchemy, because it's not about fixing, right? It's not about getting rid of things. It's not about trying to make it all perfect. It's about cultivating a level of understanding that allows you to be present, that allows you to hold that space and simultaneously like live in the ancestral realm and on the earth plane. So I think that's so beautiful, and I think that that story really like showcased that in so many different ways. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, I also want to pick your brain a little bit. Okay, so you're talking about the shame or like the fear or the guilt that comes up from feeling this calling to work with cacao or sit in a ceremony with Wachuma or whatever it is that you're working with. I would love to hear more about that experience for you and what you're like growing into because of it.
Yeah. Um, so as I stated in the beginning, I have a connection with the plants that kind of stems from addiction. So what comes up for me, especially when I'm sitting in ceremony, oh, okay, maybe she'll come back, but especially when I'm sitting in ceremony, I'll notice that, here she is. Okay, so when I'm sitting in ceremony, I'll notice like a lot of shame come up around like, oh, but like
I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Can anyone that's listening hear Mads or me? You're like silenced. That's so weird.